5, 6, 7. So we do have a quorum. There is 7 of us. So we're gonna start this meeting at 6:01. First of all, I'd like to thank Tom for allowing us to be here tonight in Sudbury. And so why don't we start with you introducing the school to everyone and all that?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
So would you like to take a walking tour, or do you want a verbal?
You can do whatever you like. If you would like us to do a walking tour, we're great with that.
That would be fine.
Okay. So I'm gonna pull us back in. Hello. All right, so thank you very much for showing us the school. How are you? Is there anything you would like to tell the folks at home about Sudbury that maybe they don't know about that you might have expressed off camera?
Call us up, and we will love to have you come by our celebration of learning night for our current topic of shelters. Will be on Thursday, October 17th. From 5 to 6 p.m. here, and the partially constructed projects are evolving, and they will be ready, embedded with great presentations on that day, Thursday the 17th, 5 to 6 p.m.
Here. Awesome. Thank you very much, Tom. Okay. So we're gonna call the meeting to order. First I need a motion for the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Wow, did you get that? Okay.
Just pick a couple names.
All right. Is there anything we need to add or change to the agenda? Anybody have any issues? Hearing none, all those in favor of the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstaining? We have a meeting agenda. There we go. Communications with parents, citizens, and staff. Thanks for coming. Anything you want to say to us before we get going?
Should I introduce myself?
Sure.
Should I stand up?
Absolutely.
So, hello everyone. I am the student council president of Otter Valley. My name is Edward. So, what student council is planning to do in Otter Valley is rewriting the handbook, the student handbook, which seems to be outdated for especially today's standards. So what we're seeing inside the school building, the rule enforcement in the building versus what's actually being said for rule enforcement on the handbook, there's an imbalance there. It's not the same. So the main goal is to equalize it. So the entire rewriting process will be a 4-phase process. The first phase would be to implement changes that would likely have no opposition. So most of these changes will consist of things that all of you will agree with. Phase 2 changes are the main changes that will bring what the handbook says to an equal level of what's actually being enforced. Not all rules will be affected by phase 2, but this is where most of the equalizing will happen. And then phase 3 is where student input comes in. So this can have an opinion of rule enforcement in general. So this will include changes to the tardy system, changes to rules regarding personal technology, etc. And phase 4 is final edits, final changes. It's basically like making a final draft. Now, throughout all the phases, there'll be submissions of different sections. So I'm not sure if you'll see the changes. I imagine you would. But basically, I'll submit the changes that students come up with, and then it will be reviewed and they'll be submitted. So it's section by section, phase by phase. That's basically it.
So are you doing this in tandem with the administration? Is that?
Yes. So in about August, early August, I received permission from Mr. Avery to initiate this project. So I intend to have the rewriting process start hopefully within a week. Hopefully. But we'll definitely have at least the first 2 phases done by the end of November.
Who are the participants initially?
So the initial participants are myself, Livia, and some faculty members too. So the advising teacher for student council, Ms. Callahan, and then Mr. Avery also will have his input once he returns. And then any students that volunteer to join, although we're struggling to gain students to actually join the process.
In the process, are you going to be putting out your draft material for the students to review and get feedback on?
So what will basically happen is the sections would be assigned to a student. They'll write it, and we'll look over it as a team. And depending on what needs to be changed or not, we'll make the changes there. Then we bring it to the advising teacher, make changes there. Then we bring it up to the administration, Mr. Avery or Mr. Lawrence, and then we'll make any last changes before it gets presented here and then put into the handbook.
Okay.
Any additional questions?
I would just like to thank you for doing this, Edward.
Yeah, no, it's a great idea. Awesome. Thank you.
Edward, what is your last name? Thank you.
Do you have any questions for us?
Not at the moment.
Okay. Awesome. Well, if you do, speak up. We're happy to hear you. So, thank you for letting us know what you're doing.
Thank you.
Okay, board professional development. We get to skip that, looks like, because we don't have anything going on. Consent agenda. Can I get a motion?
So moved. Second.
Second. Any discussion? There's no discussion for consent agenda. Okay.
Could we pull the action plan aside for a comment?
The action plan, yes, we can pull that off. Okay? Yep. So we will do the consent agenda for items A through D. Anybody have anything else? Okay. So all those in favor of the consent agenda, items A through D, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstaining? Okay, consent agenda passes. RNESU action plan, we need a motion before we can discuss that one. Derek, you wanna make the motion?
What do I need for?
To act on it.
I move that we have a discussion about the
RNESU action plan.
RNESU action plan.
Anybody for a second?
Second.
Okay, what you got?
First of all, a process question. It's listed here on our agenda that we approve the Rutland Northeast Supervisory Union Action Plan.
Yep.
I'm just not sure I mean, why are we as a board approving the plan? Does Barstow approve the plan also? And
So anything that RNESU comes up with has to go out to both of its districts, which would be Barstow and us.
Right.
We then approve it, and then it goes back to RNESU for final approval. So if you had anything you wanted to change, whatever, then we would discuss it here, make those changes, send it back to RNESU, who would then act on it, and then send it back to us again for approval, and then it would go back to RNESU.
so this is the continuous improvement plan for this year.
Yes. Yes, it is.
There's a lot in it, and I'm not sure how it's going to be monitored or assessed, but I'd like to be involved in it if there needs to be representation. There is a section called, let's see what do they call it? The supports and extensions planning.
Which page is that one on? Oh, right here, focus area number 1. Okay,
What we hope to see in the future, and then they go into discussion past work for this school year. In work for this school year, one of the things that they're going to explore is restorative justice will be explored and researched by an SU team, and consider a school-wide, a supervisory union-wide implementation within the next 3 years. I'd like to be involved in that team, if
So-
if there's a creation of the team, or how that team is being formed, or
So all of that stuff would be done at the administration level, and
Rutland Northeast?
it would be Jean and all of her employees and whatnot. School board
Okay.
members normally do not participate in that stuff
Oh.
because we are removed from anything that has to do with running the school, other than making sure Jean's doing her
Okay,
job.
because it falls into like curriculum development? and
Yes,
those kinds of
right.
things?
If you wanted to do that stuff, we would have to ask you to get off the board, which we don't want you to do.
No, I'm just interested in it.
Right, yeah, and so at this point, it would just be something that Jean and her team would work on, and all of this staff.
So they would be reporting out to us?
Right.
I mean, this is a huge document, a huge work
So
document.
this is done because I believe you submitted this to the state, correct?
This is a federal,
So this
state
is,
requirement.
this is a state requirement, so we are required by the state to send this to them once a year.
Yeah.
For anything that we are, so that we're continuously improving on whatever. So every year, we will see this continuing action plan that we have to approve because it's being sent to the state. Does that make sense? So we'll see the progress every year through this.
I'd be interested
program.
in seeing the progress.
Right, so we'll have to wait
Rather
another.
rather than just doing some paperwork to please the state, I'd really like to see some progress in terms of the impact on students.
Sure, absolutely. And I think you'll see that already, because we saw this last year. So there's probably some, you can see in the document where it does talk about past work.
Yes.
And then it also talks about the work that they plan on working on in this year. So in next year's continuing improvement plan, we should hopefully see that the work that they're working on this year is now past work, and they're gonna continue working on other things as they move forward.
I mean, this is good evidence in terms of some of the monitoring that could
Absolutely,
take place as time goes on
right.
as well, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Anybody else have any questions about the continuous improvement plan that we need to approve tonight? Okay, so all of those that approve the RNESU action plan as written, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstaining? Okay, we've approved the action plan. Thank you for your comments, Derek. They are helpful.
You're welcome.
Okay, incidental information. The first thing is the superintendent's report. You want to act on that tonight?
She's not here.
That is the first thing it says. Superintendent absence, October 1st through the 15th.
Yes, so we've been planning and we have, all of our own little roles as to what we do in her absence. And day one, woo-hoo, no problems. Day two, same thing. So we're looking forward to her returning. But no, I don't really have anything more. I'm imagining that the reason I had the pleasure of coming is because of the second bullet, the monitoring report for financial planning and budgeting.
Yep, we'll talk about that one later. I will talk about the spotlight on our NESU. We did that last week. Derek and I and Allison and Jean did a spotlight on the task force and where we are right now and what our plans are going forward. We've already received that back. I think Jean sent it out to all of you. So if you have the ability to post on Front Porch Forum or on Facebook, please do so. Watch it yourself. It's just some really good information and to get the word out to everybody about what we're doing with the task force and what the three options were. Yes, Emily?
You did a great job. You really.
Thank you. We ran out of time.
Right down to the last second, but I think that you covered the most important things that we want to convey in a brief amount of time, and that's a really good video to get out and share, rather than expecting somebody to watch our entire last meeting. You know, that boiled it all down. Well
Awesome.
done.
Thank you, Emily. Let's see, let's talk communications. I haven't seen anything. You haven't seen anything?
No.
Okay. And then there's no legislative updates at this time either. Global ends monitoring, which is our policy 1.0. There's no items for consideration at this time. However, we are going to have a board retreat in November, correct? About our
Is that the
ends policy.
third? Is that the third? That has a 3.
That's where Barstow and our NESU and all of us are gonna get together and do that. I don't remember exactly what date that is, but that is in November. And we'll be doing that at Otter Valley. So, executive limitations monitoring report, policy 2.0. So tonight, in your packet is the monitoring report for 2.4, financial planning and budgeting. Tonight, we did see it the first time in September for a brief review. I know that Jean and Brenda have revamped it even so that it might be a little bit easier to read. So please pull that out. We should be reviewing that tonight. And also with it in your packet was, there's a 4-page pamphlet called Assessing a Monitoring Report, Quick Start Guide from the Governance Coach, which I hope you were able to get a chance to read. It's really helpful when trying to review a monitoring report, like we're going to be reviewing right now for the very first time.
Got it.
So, I'm going to assume that we need a motion so that we can start discussing. So, who would like to make the motion about the monitoring report?
I move that we accept the monitoring report.
Okay? Thank you. Okay, discussion. I was hoping we would have a really good, big, long discussion about this since it's the first time, and you guys are like, nothing.
I'd like to make a comment that I was surprised at the brevity of it at first, but as I looked in, studied it a little bit, it made a lot of sense to me. And I really appreciate the addition of the budget development assumptions, because that covered so much, and of really some of the policy guidelines that we have. I like the format of it in terms of in thinking about future monitoring reports and the other areas that we're going to need to cover, using this outline of the interpretation and definitions of terms, the rationale, the idea of observable conditions, and then the chart of outlining the conditions with the evidence piece really helps make it clear. It made it clear to me, and I didn't glaze over when I was looking at it. And the way sometimes when you try to tackle something like a financial plan.
Well, I will admit that when we met with Susan the day after our 8-hour-long policy governance stuff, she was the one who suggested putting it in a format like this.
Yeah.
With the, and I think it read a lot better than the first time that we read it, because
Yeah.
this gives you, here's my interpretation, here's
Yeah.
the evidence, and that's much easier to read and understand. So, I guess one of the things I would like to make sure of is that when you're reading this, one of the things that we have to look at is whether or not her interpretation makes sense. And so I'm going to make us take a few minutes and really look through this, because I think this is our first jumping off into this, and I don't want to just approve it and move on. So if we can just take a couple of minutes to go through the interpretations that she had on the first page, and then look at her rationale and her observable conditions, and just see what if anything jumped out at you, if anything, it probably looks fine, but I just want to know if everything looks good to you guys. So I'll take a stab at this little, or did you, you look like you wanted to stab at it. I'll let you go first.
No, you go first.
Okay, so my stab at it is that, first of all, looking at the interpretations, she went into a lot of detail, something that I don't know that she needed to do. I mean, we want as much detail as possible, but she was able to point out lots of things. You know, it wasn't that I just interpret this to be X, Y, and Z. She also gave authoritative information as to why she thinks that, using GAP, using FASB, and all of those things. I also like the fact that she continuously returns back to the ends policy or to our other policies, because honestly, that's why we're here, our ends policy. So, anybody else have anything else?
Seems reasonable to me.
Okay,
I think, yeah, I felt like it was well done.
okay.
Definitely reads better than the first time around, I think.
Right, yeah, I think it definitely does read better. I think it's easier for us to review and to look at it. And, so flipping over to the next couple of pages, which is her evidence of compliance. I just want to look at that real quick and, thank you for coming. Anybody have any comments? Anything be able to be written better? Did you give you more information than you anticipated? And this is our first time where we actually get to see that whether or not Jean is doing her job. I think I've said that 3 times to people today, is that this is the first time where we've always said we want to see the evidence, we want to see the information. And this is the first time that we actually get to do that. And looking at this, seeing that it's all financial, obviously, which is my wheelhouse, I feel very good about the fact that our district is doing everything it can to achieve our objectives within the parameters that we've given them within our budget, and that we're moving forward trying to give the best education to kids that we can. And I think this is our first evidence of that. Okay.
We have had evidence that there's been, you know, financial responsibility when we've had audits done. But this is specific to our, you know, our goals.
Sure. Well, it's just specific to our ends and specific to making sure that we're doing what's right for kids, not just necessarily spending the money in the right bucket.
Right.
So. Okay. Yeah, go for
Just in
it.
the evidence of compliance on the, on that first page there at the bottom, where the reserve funds that we distributed between those 2 different places and the priorities established by the board were accomplished. That was for 2019,
Yes.
not for future multi-year planning, right?
Correct.
But not all those reserve funds were used. You just stated that those reserve funds were there and that,
So what this is telling you is that, exactly. So it's telling you that the reserve funds were there. I think later on in the report,
Yeah,
it will
it
tell you
says
how
much
much you
is-
committed from it and how much is still there to document the evidence of its sustainability.
So this $1.1 million on the bottom of that page that you're talking about is actual money that we move from
Yep.
from our budget into the reserves.
yeah, and it says later the after-school fund has 754,000 something and.
Yep.
And the facilities reserve
Well, I'm thinking
Whoa, that's
about that.
a lot.
One of the questions that you had asked me in the last meeting was about the front entrance at Otter Valley, and if we had already delineated money to it,
And we have.
and
For
we
the
have.
2020 budget.
From
I'm
the-
not,
From the facilities reserve, so we had earmarked or encumbered or reserved $165,000 for it. Oh, wait, I'm sorry.
that was for the bathrooms.
That's for the
That was for the
bathrooms.
bathrooms.
No, you have not taken action on the actual front of it, mainly because it was a lot of chicken and the egg, you know? So we were late in the budget cycle. It is a project that is going to exceed $500,000. Vermont bid law will require realistically 30 to 90 days of a bid development process. And we knew in May, there was no way that was going to happen for summer construction. So you have not done anything or instructed us to do anything for next summer construction. That is something for your consideration still.
So, what I'll do is, if it's okay with everyone else, is add that to our November whatever first meeting so that we can get that underway.
Yeah.
I don't want to do it tonight because it's not on our agenda, but we will put it on for
Have
November.
discussion about that.
Okay? All right. Is that okay with you?
Yeah,
Okay.
and how you want to fund it,
Yeah.
whether you want to
do we need to ask, any information being brought ahead of time to start that, just so we have some idea of numbers, or is that not really possible at this point?
So we would not have any better idea of numbers really than last year's
Yeah.
through the bond process, except maybe inflation. But I do know through the task force, there's conversation about, and I apologize if this is an offensive word, but a super school versus super campus. You know, super campus being multiple facilities at the Otter Valley, super school being building up at Otter Valley. So I'm not sure how you want to weave those together, or if you want to weave those together.
Well, that's a 5-10 year plan.
Exactly, and that's
I
why
don't
I'm
think
saying I'm not
those-
sure where you want to go with that, but, so that would help give me direction as to what you need.
Okay, so I think that's something we'll talk about at our meeting in November. I would ask that Jean bring with her, the plans that we had from the last time we went out to bond, yeah.
For the front entrance
Yeah,
only?
for the front entrance. Yeah, was there anything else we haven't done? We did the bathrooms, we did all the bathrooms, so I think that was everything.
NOV, yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, so getting back to our, take on, policy 2.4. If nobody else has any concerns, questions, or comments, we will go to vote. Everybody,
Just
oh, sure, go for it.
not really a concern, but
Okay,
it's more detailed than I expected, which is great. Is this the level of detail we can expect on future reports? Do we know?
well, if she's given it to us this way the first time, then we of course have to expect it the next time. But I don't know that for certain, but I would hope that, yes, that we would see that the next time.
Yeah, I will tell
I would
you
assume
that-
it would also depend on the, topic that we're working on.
Right. We have gone to training as well as, I had the pleasure of going with Rebecca and Barbara and Ann Singizer from Barstow in June, and then, of course, the training on Sunday. So we learned from the administration a lot about the difference between evidence and procedure or process, and so I think they will only get better.
That's awesome.
I just have a comment, it's
Yeah.
just, it all is just a comment, it's the darn bird of fun.
Oh,
That money's sitting there, it's crazy.
I know, I know.
That's it, that's all I just wanted to say that.
Okay, thank you. Sure, there's other people saying that too. He said the darn bird at fund, that there's money just sitting there in the
I
bird
know.
at fund, so. But that's okay, I don't think we can access much more of that anyway, because we're actually accessing money out of it every year as it is for the, Lothrop stuff that was done, right? We use that money to pay for the Lothrop bond?
Yes, for the
Okay.
I was just
biomass.
looking at
So-
the legal fees of $27,000.
Oh, yeah.
I hope that's done.
Yeah, we hope that's done. Okay. That is frustrating. Okay, so all those in favor of our ends monitoring report for 2.4, which is financial budgeting and whatever, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstaining? We have just approved our first monitoring report in policy governance. Thank you. Awesome. I know, we should all be so happy. That's right, we did it. We did it. Okay, so moving into governance process, we're gonna be talking about community linkage at this point. So, Derek and I, talking about that, were at, the football game this past Saturday, and we got quite a few comments. We asked the question on, an easel about, what did it say? It said an Otter Valley, graduate can, and then we asked them to fill in the blanks. We got lots of different answers. We'll have more, we'll talk about it more on our October 16th meeting, where we can delineate it, because I still have all the sticky notes in my car. We haven't done anything with it. But we did get some good responses, and I think mostly what we heard was we want everyone to be happy, the ability to move forward in their life, go to college. One person said to make sure they finished college, so we want to do more than just get them there. We'd like them to finish. And we had a couple other snarky comments, but other than that, I thought it was well received. It was hard pulling answers out of people. They did not want to come see us.
I think people were surprised to see us there.
That's true.
So they're gonna have to get used to it, because we're gonna do more of it.
That's
And
right.
as they get used to it, I think we're
Start
gonna be
gravitating
perceived as more approachable
Yeah.
and get more and different kinds of feedback.
Can you say more about how you were set up or how you went about this? Were you?
So we stayed right by the food, because we thought that was a good place to grab people, right in between the garbage cans, because you had to throw your food away between us, on either side. So
You can make eye contact.
you had to see it like, hi, how are you? A lot of it was people that we knew. We called over, and then we tried to get their friends, or we actually even tried to go through the line at one point, handed out a sticky pad, and then tried to get them to pass it back. And there was always the one guy that was like, no, I'm not doing that. So then we'd have to start over and do it again. We had probably 50 responses. There were probably a lot more people there than that, but we did well, I thought. And,
Yeah, I mean, we had to introduce ourselves, we're from the school board and we're looking for some feedback.
yeah.
And as soon as we said that, then I noticed that people seemed to relax. 'Cause
Yeah.
they weren't sure what we were doing, what are we selling, or,
Right,
what's the pressure here?
What's the pressure here? Yeah.
How much do the raffle tickets cost?
Yeah, right,
What am I
exactly,
committing to?
exactly.
Yeah, no, there was no
No,
money.
we were even wearing these things, and they were still like, who are those people?
No money,
so-
no money changed hands.
No, we had a lot of people engage us too. I mean, we talked a lot to a few people there, as far as their experiences at Otter Valley, their kids' experiences at Otter Valley. We did talk to quite a few people, so it was good.
I did go to the bonfire, just to be a presence there, circulate around, talk to Steve, talk to Jeff and the police and whatnot, be another adult in the.
Why did you talk to the
During the-
police?
during the-
Did they
'cause they
come
were
to
there.
you, or did they come to?
there.
No, I'm just kidding.
Just there.
Yeah.
And I also went to the raft race.
We have to think about something a little bit different for the raft race along that road.
Well, no, it was just, I was just visiting with
Okay.
people and cheering on
Yeah, no, it's
the
good.
rafters. But it was fun. I enjoyed being around the students and the parents and the folks that were there.
I just worry about the road, because I went
That's
through
a
there
crazy
early in the
place.
morning, and we either need a police presence to slow people down, or we need to do something a little different. Because people just walk out in the middle of the road.
Well, no, there were people with vests, there were
That's
staff with vests, and there were cones, and there were some people, there were some flaggers that were
Okay,
calming the traffic.
then they need to be there earlier.
They were.
Okay, well, not when I went through. Not when I went through.
Slow down, Lori.
I know, right?
Well, I didn't know they were there until I came around the corner. Oh. Anyway,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
twisty-turny road.
All the students are on the water though, so.
Right, yeah, I know, I was just gonna
It's just
take out
the
a couple
adults.
parents, that's all.
It's just the adults.
So,
So,
big deal.
to follow up with a show and tell,
yeah.
for the next event, we're gonna be at the Harvest Fest.
Yep.
And do a table, thing. So I did a show and tell, trifold that's got, the school profiles.
You want to show it to the camera too?
Yes. Our ends policy, the schedule, contact to the, let's talk, you know, those kinds of encouragements. But primarily it was to have the different school profiles all in one place, so that as we talk to people, a lot of folks know about their school, but they really don't know about the other schools. So it gives a chance for folks to see and talk about that. And I'm open to other formats or other pieces of information, and we can update it and colorize it and do other things too. But this is from our district handbook. The information that already exists there.
Awesome, thank you.
So
talking about Harvest Fest, that's a great segue. We will be there this Sunday from 1 to 4. I'm probably going to get there at noon to set up, so if anybody wants to come help, they're more than welcome to do so. But I also wanted to know if you want to stop in, you know, if you want to just take over for half an hour or an hour, don't need to be there all 3 hours, but just to come and kind of check things out, see how things are going. My vision for this is to have 2 additional questions up on easels that we can get people to answer, like we did at the football game. And so I also would like you guys to help me figure out what those 2 questions are tonight. And then the other thing that we'll have there is asking about the middle school model, which I know that
is this the handout?
that is the handout, yes, that Allison sent to all of us, that will be available on the table for people. I will be picking those up on Friday to have on the table. But we also will have a box there so that people can read that or ask us questions about it and then answer whether or not they are interested in moving forward at looking at the middle school model, which is really getting plans as to how we could do that at the high school.
Sort of a comment box?
Sort of, it's gonna be like a yes/no box, and then with a comment on the bottom of the piece of paper, so that they can comment yay, nay, why, you know, why I don't like it, or maybe they don't have any comments, that's fine, but they can comment. Oh, good, awesome, she did it for me already. I talked to her today, so we can send that around if you like. It'll just be 1/4 of a piece of paper, so they can say yes or no. They can say whether they're a parent, a community member, or a staff member, and then what town they're from, so that we can kind of gauge the participation that we're getting.
Is it possible to frame the question in such a way that it's informative and we get the most out of it? So,
Yes.
for example, given that this middle school model is the best opportunity for our students, what is a reason that you would not agree with going forward?
Sure. You can do that however you want.
Do a positive framing of it?
I think knowing why people are against it is equally as important as knowing whether they're for or against. Because if we
Okay.
don't know why, if it's, I don't want a 5th grader in a building with an 8th grader, you know, that's different than I don't want to spend money on a new building.
Okay.
So I think knowing the why is important, and also it has to be clear that if you're against it, you're against the best model for our children to learn, and there should be a substantial reason for that.
Provided any
That was
information.
sent
Today. We're gonna have 250 of them
So we did
at the table.
do that a little bit on our Let's Talk, our NESU. We did put that out on the Let's Talk thing that is now available for everybody to read, as far as that it's best practice. It's
Is it
also on
in-
this.
So I haven't had a chance, that's the email that
Yep.
came out today.
There you go.
I haven't read that, so that's what I was,
Yep,
that's
so
where I
it's in
was
the
trying,
background.
it's in that, okay.
Yep, it's in there.
That was my, if we're gonna ask them.
Pass that down to everyone.
What was that question, Lauren?
She wanted to know if on here it talks about why the middle school model is the best practice. So yes,
Maybe that could be altered, that if no, then answer this, you know?
Or if yes, I mean, you could have yes or no or why for either one,
Yeah. Could.
right?
Yep. Yep.
Are we gonna have something that talks about that as a 5-10 year plan, just so people don't make the assumption that this is somehow?
So we could do that on one of the easels and
Yeah,
talk,
just
enhance
something
middle
big.
school, and then something big saying 5 to 10 year plan, first step is this, blah, blah, blah. We can do that on one of the easels. Allison had said to me earlier today that she wanted me to have the easel for the answers to this question about the middle school model, and I felt that we didn't want it stuck up on an easel, that we wanted to give people the ability to be a little, they could say what they wanted without fear of me, or without fear of someone saying, oh, you don't like it, or oh, you're for it, or whatever, or somebody looking and go, well, everybody else said no, so I'm gonna say no, or everybody else said yes, so this is why we came up with this little thing for the middle school model. But I do wanna ask kind of the same question that we asked at Otter Valley football game, as far as, what do you want to see when an Otter Valley graduate graduates? What do you want them to be able to do? And a lot of them said make a difference, be happy, whatever. But should they have life skills? Should they be able to, I want my kid to be able to live independently, because they're going to go do that for 4 years, and then I don't want them coming home for long.
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys, but yep, you're gonna give you the foot you need, and then out you go.
That's a good
the other
question, Lori,
foot
but I think if we go down that road, we should probably also include with that. Do you feel that the kids are tracking towards that?
We could ask that question, sure.
I mean, if we're asking what would you like to see, I'd also like to know how do you feel it's going?
So we could ask both of those questions at at this time. Do you, what do you want them to be able to do? And then do you feel that an Otter Valley graduate can do the things that you want them to be able to do by the time they graduate? We can, yes or no, and they can,
Right.
It's an opportunity to
Absolutely, it's a
engage
great
in a
out-
conversation.
Yep.
What's missing, or what do we need
Right,
to improve
or
on?
we can say, if you don't feel that they are, what's missing? And maybe they can answer that question. Because that gives us more information than just yes or no.
Yeah, it's like a fulfillment question.
Yeah, right, absolutely. So I'm fine to do that,
Yeah, that was helpful.
yeah.
I was also thinking of a question or a statement that says something to be proud of in our school district is.
Okay, that's a good one. Oh, plan on both. Okay, so that gives us 3 easels. We'll have one easel to kind of say middle school model. We're going out 5 to 10 years. Our first step is to, these are the steps we've done. And then now we're trying to see if the public wants to see us continue to move down to the 5 to 8, grade 5 to 8 middle school model.
Would it help to have a visual, to have a map that shows where we have middle school students? Because we have middle school students in Sudbury, in Brandon, and in Pittsford.
Mhm.
And if that was on a map, middle school students here, it,
Okay. Yeah, I don't see why we can't have a map too. We don't want to have too much. I mean, we can have a map. We can put that on the table next to. Actually, that might tell us where our 5th and maybe we can somehow add it to that.
yeah.
Maybe we could add it to your visual aid as to where our 5th through 8th graders are currently. Maybe with a red, like a key on the bottom, and put a red star on the ones that have our 5, 6, and 7, 8. Yep. And we may be able to also put on there why 5th through 8th grade is best practice. I mean, it's in here, but not everybody's going to read that sheet while they're going through Harvest Fest trying to grab their kids and make their leaf person. So maybe if we just had some bullets and they can take the one sheet with them to read it later.
Or the people there should at least be able to speak to it, because that'll probably be a question that'll be like a verbal
Sure.
question. you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. So,
Or just a caution, and I'm not suggesting that we don't do these things, because I think it's important.
Yep.
But I think we just have to exercise a bit of caution and understand what kind of data we're getting. We're not getting broad-based data. We may not be getting any data that represents our communities as a whole.
sure,
So for example, the football game, we're getting data from people who go to football games,
yep,
which may be this slice of art. So, again, I'm not saying we don't do these things, but we have to be careful not to over-interpret them. You know, at a minimum, I forgot what the magic number is, it's 1,024 or something like that. You know, those random surveys people call us up and talk to us about? I think it's at 1,024, you even begin to get a sense that this is now accurate data.
sure.
And we're not gonna have 1,024 responses to anything we do, I don't think. So we just have to be cautious about not overreading what we think we're looking at with this limited.
Excuse me, well, you're right in that, although we are trying very hard to go to every town and something that they're doing. So that's another segue. We want to go to the Pittsford Harvest Fest in November. We want to be at the Sudbury Road Race here on October 19th. I would like to come to the celebration of learning that they're having on the 17th, but I think the 19th is going to have more people from the town here. I want to go to the Whiting Fall Festival that they're having on the 26th of October, because there'll be lots of people from Whiting there. And I still need to find something that Leicester is doing. I don't know. I haven't seen anything. But if anybody finds something, we want to be there. So not only are we, so it's not like we're just going to the Harvest Fest in Brandon and saying, this is representative of our entire district. It's one venue for that.
Right.
So,
Again, I wanna be clear, I'm not suggesting we don't do those things.
no,
I just don't want us to overinterpret what we think we're seeing.
no, so, but my plan is that whatever questions we have at Harvest Fest, we're going to have at every single venue. It will not change. The football game was kind of just kind of a dry run.
Trial balloon.
You know, it was a trial. So, but this is the,
The other thing I'm gonna continue to encourage us to think about is having non-binding questions on the ballot at town meeting, because that's when you'll get a broad sense of what everybody's thinking. Not just the people who have kids in school or who go to harvest fairs or football games.
so as long as we have those in place by January, we can absolutely do that. So unfortunately, in order to figure out if we need to do this, we need to do what we're doing this time. Plus, I also think it's important that we're out and about in the public. The more they see us, Greg, the more that they see us, the more likely they'll be willing to
No question about that.
chat with
I
us.
agree with Bonnie's point too, but the other thought I had, you just kind of shared there, Lori, is that it's really a twofold effort that we're putting out there. We're disseminating information as well as getting input. So it's really not just taking the input and then using it as data or whatever. We're also there to disseminate information and really do more of a education process for people too.
And I understand all that, and I'm supportive of doing all that. I just want to be sure we don't overread what we think we're getting for responses.
I'm with you on that, yeah.
Greg?
Barry just touched on what I was going to say, which was I actually even don't just see it as twofold. I see it more as informing than gathering data. I think we're informing the more we get out there, because they're not here right here. And I don't know if they're watching there. So our job is to go out there and inform. And as we're there, we're asking questions. And we know it's not scientific data, but we might as well ask some questions while we're there in all these events. I don't think any of us have any illusion that it's scientific data, but we are trying to, I see it, I mean, we may all see it differently, but I see it mostly as informing with asking.
And I think on a timeline standpoint, if you read the bottom of what Allison wrote there, there's going to be a lot more sensing going forward, where we'll be collecting more information and getting more of a sense for where people stand and then feel out what is the best way going forward, like a down-the-road effort. Because ultimately, you know, I don't really know what the numbers are, to your point, you know, maybe it's 100 people or a couple of hundred people you're gonna touch at these events, but if you go to a bond, it's several thousand people that'll be weighing in on the pluses or minuses of the proposal. So that's a vast number of people you aren't going to talk to.
Derek?
Just to, not to belabor it, but the idea that we're informing our constituent group and our stakeholders that it meets our obligation to our commitment to intentional engagement with the community and with the work that the task force has done about being upfront and transparent with people about the thoughtfulness that we're taking about difficult decisions that are down the pike that we're going to have to deal with. And so this intentional engagement activities set that we're talking about is just the beginning of that right now. But if people have other ideas on how to do that, I'm sure that we could figure out more ways to do this. But it gets to people over time because they're going to be seeing school board presence in various locations at various times, and it's going to pay off down the road when we really have tough decisions to make, that people aren't going to reject us out of hand for not being thoughtful about it and not soliciting feedback from people the way that frankly I see happening in some of the other school districts, where they've just made decisions about closing schools or made decisions about things without getting much feedback from people. And the ensuing feedback is not positive. So.
Right.
Well, and the other thing we're doing here is we're trying to build some trust. I mean, the more that we're out there, the more that they're going to feel like they can talk to us and tell us what they're really thinking, instead of going, oh, school board members, and making the big wide swing, you know. So,
Deciding they weren't that hungry.
I know, right? Oh, I don't need that burger after all.
I think to Greg's point too, it is a great opportunity to inform, and so that when we do get to those points where there's difficult decisions, it's not the first time people have seen us. It's not the first time we've engaged in a conversation with them. It's not the first time we've been out there talking about our schools. So there is a relationship building that's happening with each and every one of these activities. And I didn't mean to imply they weren't important.
No.
I just wanted that little caution about we have to be careful about how we use the feedback that we're getting.
I just think it would be good for us to kind of feel the temperature a little bit. I think it gives us an idea of what the temperature is out there. May not be the end-all, be-all, whatever, but it does give us, we've dipped our toes in the water to see if we want to play.
The other thing we should give ourselves credit for is our toes have been in the water for a while. I've been on the board approaching 2 years now, and there's a tremendous difference from 2 years ago till now, as far as us being out there, people feeling, getting information, getting a better understanding. I mean, the misconceptions that were there when I first came on the board about even what the structure or the architecture of the district was just surprising. But I think we've been doing a good job of that. We really should give ourselves credit for that because we have moved the dial, even though it moves slowly. We have moved the dial.
Yep. Yes, we have. So, afterwards, we don't have to do it right now, but if anybody's going to be there or wants to be there for a half hour, at any of these events, you don't have to go to every single one. You don't have to commit to, if you want to commit to one or to none, I don't care, but just so that we have some coverage at all of these events. The one thing we are going to talk about briefly is, introducing ourselves. You know how to introduce yourselves, you're a board member, blah, blah, blah. But the one thing is if somebody has a complaint, make sure that you don't try and take that complaint on as something that we're going to be able to fix ourselves. Make sure they've gone through the chain of command. They've talked to the teacher, they've talked to whoever that person might be. So if there's an issue at Otter Valley, have they talked to the principal, have they talked to whatever? We can't necessarily fix this problem for them. If they've done that and they haven't felt good, they're gonna go to Jean, and they're gonna talk to her, who will hopefully fix it or not fix it, and then if it's still a problem, they'll come to us. But they have to make sure they go through chain of command first. Yes, sir.
One constituent group that I don't know that we've made any plans around extending ourselves to in terms of engagement is the staff at the various schools. So at some point, I'd want to have more discussion about.
So that is something, I've actually talked to Jean about that a little bit, and we would go with Jean, but the idea is that the staff is her purview, and so we can be there, but not necessarily, if we have something specific to bring to them, but honestly, she's the one who deals with the staff and can relay any messages from us, or can tell us if there's something that she would like us to help with. But honestly, we're there to support them, and they know that. I think we answered that at convocation. But honestly, we can't just go to a staff event or anything like that. But I have talked to Jean about that and suggested that maybe one of us or, a group could go with her to various different things if she felt it were appropriate. So that is in the work. I did talk to her about
Right,
that.
she goes and visits.
But she does the
regular
Jeans
school
with,
visits.
right, she does.
And it would be good for board members to go along with her, so that there's a presence. There's a perception that the board is not isolated from what's going on
Sure.
in schools.
She just doesn't want the staff to feel like they can jump her to get to us.
Right.
And so that's where, so we're taking it slow, but
That's
yes,
That's the policy governance piece.
You got it.
That's
Always see these
important.
people on the street every day.
Absolutely, no, absolutely, but it's different, it's different when you see them on the street every day and hey, how are you, blah, blah, blah,
Valid
it's
point.
different when it's board,
No, good point.
so, okay. So,
And it is a monitoring report that you will have. So policy 2.1, executive limitations, treatment of students, parents, staff, guardians, that is a monitoring report you will get.
yeah. He just wants to engage with staff, I think is what I'm hearing.
I think engaging, going with Jean is not the best because she's there to do her job and, whatever is gonna happen for the day, so that would be hard for us, but different events, I
But
could
different
see.
events, if she were to do something else, it would be, absolutely. So, convocation's a great time for board members to be there. Staff are there, they're eager, it's first, they're getting ready to go back to their classrooms and students, and so they wanna see us at that stuff. They wanna see us at, open houses, graduation, any of those kinds of things. Celebration of learning, they would love to see us here. So those are all times that would make sense for us to come in, and I went to every open house this year, and every teacher was surprised or happy or both to see that we took the time to go, especially if it wasn't our school.
Was there a lot of dialogue between you and them at that point, or just happy to see you?
It was, I don't think we're at the stage yet where we can start talking about stuff like that, but it was definitely a, wow, you're here, thanks for coming, this is what we're doing in my classroom.
Yeah.
That's what they want, and they want to know that we appreciate that.
Is it not appropriate when we have information like this, where we're going out and talking to the community, to present that to specific staff? Like if we're talking about, retrospectively the bond or future-looking middle school model, does that information get disseminated to staff?
So so it gets disseminated to staff, but you could also talk to staff at these kinds of events. We're not gonna stop you from doing that. It's not like you're telling a teacher that they can do X, Y, and Z in their classroom without approving it through Jean or whatever. We're just we're just swapping information at that point. I don't see a problem with that. Okay. So moving forward, so everybody's good with the questions. One of them was Becky, something to be proud of in our school district is. An Otter Valley student or an Otter Valley graduate can answer, and then are Otter Valley graduates able to do whatever it was that they mentioned on the other board? Is that okay? Yep. Okay. We need to designate a VisBit and VHI proxy. This is what's done at Lake Maury the first weekend in November. Bill Mathis is attending that 2-day retreat, I guess is what it's called. And I will also be there. So we're both happy to be your proxies or to be there to represent you guys. We just need to designate someone, and I'm happy for it to be Bill. That doesn't bother me, so.
We have to motion?
Yep, go for it.
Can I just ask, so,
Yeah.
so what you need is, you either want to designate, a person as a proxy, and that means that that person really needs to go to the meeting in order to vote. Or you can designate the board of the meeting to vote your proxy. So you really want to make sure that whoever you designate goes to the meeting, which I believe is at something like 7 in the morning. So, just
can we-
thought I
can we
would
leave that
share
open?
that. No, you have to actually put the name on.
Oh, okay, we can't say whoever attends.
Yeah, I know.
Is our
You have
designate.
to.
So I think Bill said he would be there, so I'm assuming he's staying for the entire thing and he would be there. So if you want to designate Bill, we just need a motion.
So
Are
moved.
are you gonna be there too?
I'll be there too, but I don't, he can be the proxy, that's fine.
So the 3 plans that you get
Because he
to
did
vote
put
on
that in the email to all of us that he would be willing to be the proxy, so.
is the health plan, the VHI Health, VHI Dental Program, and the Visbit Unemployment Program.
Okay, so all those in favor of, nominating Bill to be our, Bill Mathis to be our proxy for the.
I'll make a
VHI
motion to
Oh,
have Bill
he made the
be-
motion. Okay, there you go. So all those that approve, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstaining? Okay, Bill Mathis is going to be our proxy, and I'll fill that out, and,
This one's for you then,
okay, yep.
and for all
Great.
3, good.
Okay, the next thing on our agenda is, setting budget parameters, which is actually what the budget development assumption was all about.
Right.
So essentially what we need to do today is, give Jean parameters as to what our budget should look like when they start developing the budget.
Well, so, Jean and I spoke a little bit about this before she left, and I'm trying to find my notes. So, we will, let me just give you an update in case you haven't heard about health insurance. So you may or may not know that the legislature has removed health insurance from local bargaining tables and put it into a statewide effort, and that there is a commission involved that is negotiating. So there's a commission made of board, if you will, side and the union side, and they're negotiating health insurance which will be uniform throughout the state, through all categories of employees. So even though you may hear it in the papers or in the news, talk about teachers' health insurance, it's all school employees. They are at impasse right now, I believe. They will be resolving that or going to binding arbitration. And we will know the results of that, I believe December 15th is the final date. That whatever happens, wherever that lands, that will go into place in January 2021. So we're a fiscal year, so the next year, when we go to budget, we have to guess now what the whole year is going to be like. So in conversations that Jean and I have had, we would recommend we just keep with our status quo, because we cannot change it. And there's this weird thing in the law, because we are not allowed to budget for health insurance past June 30th, and the commission will go into play on January 1st. So it's really unclear if we really have any choices from July until December anyways. So we're recommending status quo. Visbit has announced that the base plan that all of our benefits are based on is the Gold CDHP plan, and the premium increase is going up to a 0.9%. So we will build the budget with a 12.9% premium increase. We will keep co-pays as is, and we will keep the HRA and the HSA investments as is for at least until the commission's work is done and we're told otherwise. So that's kind of one hole in our budget. We are negotiating for salaries. I think you all know that you've been invited to be on, or you have already appointed people for negotiations. So I can talk to you about our recommendations in executive session as to a rate, a salary increase. The other things that are pretty standard, you know, we, as Lori said, are really outlined here. You know, so what we really need from you, though, are kind of the board goals and the board prerogatives. So you'll notice if you wanted to look at 2.4, we kind of talked about what your budget needs are, the things that we're looking for you to kind of give us some guidance on is, you know, a big one would be your board professional development. You know, if you want to invest in consultants to come in and keep maintaining it, which you're always going to, because by design, we have revolving terms, so we should be having revolving board members. So kind of keeping that investment into your professional development, so we need numbers from you for that. We would also like you to consider some of the other things, like your communication to owners, like you're doing right now. So whether you need some supplies in order to do that, that's not that much, but more whether you need some consultants, whether you need to consider some Allison time, things like that, to help make that connection for you to owners. And then, you know, we kind of ask for your guidance on whether you need consultants in regards to communications, professional development we talked about, and maybe even legal. So we will always keep a standard amount for legal issues that come up, you know, kind of throughout the course of, you know, when you're in business, you have legal issues. But also from a policy standpoint, there may be things that you want to address. And then the last thing is, you know, kind of under your purview would be your fees to things like the SBA and the voting costs that are associated with just the mechanics of voting, of helping to pay for, you know, the vote counters and the poll, I don't know what they're called, the poll clerks that check you in and check you out, those type of things. So if you want to know what you spent, it wasn't 2.4 last year. And I don't remember the number off the top of my head, so let me go back.
19 million something.
No,
Oh.
just for the board part.
Oh, yeah, okay, sorry. Well, that wasn't 19
I was gonna
million.
say, we must be really smart about
Well,
that.
I know, right?
Let's see, I think,
Yeah, it was in there what the board spent,
that's where you found the legal fees for Burdett. Do you remember, Matt? Where was
At
it?
the end, I think.
Yes.
Right
Oh,
there.
there it is. So, and so another one would be in voting, and it kind of dovetails, and so maybe you can't answer it this month, but you can finalize it next month, is, you know, kind of what you're thinking short and long term. You know, if you're thinking Otter Valley's, you know, you're in the future, you're thinking it's going to be constructed with reserve funds and not a vote, then that would help. But if you think there's going to be a vote of some sort in addition to, you know, an off-cycle vote, so a non-March vote, then there's cost associated with that. So that was some of the things that we had last year. Task force consulting, the printing of our annual report budgets, those type of things.
Do I have a question?
Sure.
So do you know if Jean has anything that she wants to add to the budget for next year that she hasn't talked to us about?
In regards to programs and services?
You got it.
I do not know. We haven't had that conversation yet. We would typically have that conversation through the month of October, which is day
Okay.
2. And that's when she's not in Italy. So, I think
Right.
by the first meeting in November, I think if she
You'll have
has
more
some,
ideas.
we'll have information on that. We'll still kind of apply the health insurance and, you know, the benefit package and that type of things that we currently have to that, but not yet.
Brenda, if I was to look back on things that we've changed in my short time here and what's worked well, I think what's helped us a lot is having somebody on a contract basis like Allison, or maybe someone else, maybe in another capacity. But having that contracted person to help us with pulling together plans, outreach stuff, offloading a lot of what, quite honestly, she's better at doing than I would be, has been a benefit to the board. And I think if we look at where we are going forward, we're just starting to get traction on some things that are outreach related. So I just see us, next year and years beyond, probably doing more of that, or hopefully doing more of that. So whatever portion of the budget that was, I think that should be as much or more than it has been.
So that was not in the budget. So that was something that we did off budget because we're not only kind of coming into swing with policy governance, but we're learning more and more each time. And so we never asked this question last year. So we kind of absorbed it within the budget. But I agree, that's one of the things I think we would ask that you say, we want this for professional development for us. We want this for outreach and consultants for whether it's communication, whether it's help with task force, whatever it might be, to kind of define those numbers for us. We don't think we will do a special vote, or we do think we might. I don't think you will, but I never predict the actions of a board. So that's the conversation that I'm asking you to have, is what do you see as a board you really want to have resources for next year for your operations?
So do we have time to think about this a little bit?
You do.
So my thought is, and you guys can tell me I'm wrong or whatever, but why don't we think about this each on our own level and figure out what makes sense for each of us, and then at our November or whatever first meeting, we can tell them what then we can really discuss it as a group, because then we all have thought about it and where we would like to see our dollars spent.
Just a qualifying thing for myself, when we look at timelines, and even this enhanced middle school proposal, if it was to get traction and move forward, we're still talking years out there, right? We're not talking about a bond proposal that would happen this year.
Right, and so one of the things that's not directly on that, but adjacent to that conversation, Jean had said to me, okay, so the board might ask you this. What might we need for architectural and engineering studies at Otter Valley to kind of look at that super school concept? Mm-hmm. And so I went to our to NBF Architects, to Ed Clark, and to Casey, who've been working with us for the last year and a half on various projects, and they've been our primary architects since I've been here. So for 24 years, in case anyone's counting.
Hey, girl.
And they said, it's really hard to judge because it has a lot of layers of complexity. But somewhere, and this might be something you want to think about, somewhere between $15,000 and $45,000 to $50,000 would give them enough money to engage architects, come up with some plans, look at regulations for wastewater and sewer and those type of things, as well as check. One of the conversations was, can we build up, structural engineering, road, because we're right on Route 7. That would be something that, and I would, because I'm always going to tell you we have enough complexities. We're fairly landlocked. We're kind of abutting the back without a lot of resources. I would say you need the $45,000 because we're looking at, needing a second gym, needing fields and playgrounds, maybe not playgrounds. But, there's just a lot of complexities to that. So that would be another example of something
I would have guessed more than that.
that you might. We actually thought that at first too,
Yeah.
but they said no. They think what you will not get are plan-ready bids. That would be $500,000 once you determine exactly what you're going to do. But you'll get some conceptual ideas. You'll get some investment with other professionals as to what things that we as layperson don't know to ask. If you don't know to ask, you don't know you need it. That will be their job, to connect with the right people to make sure we know those answers.
So you're saying that's something that we should think about including in the budget for this upcoming year?
Could, or you could also.
Reserve fund money.
You could also delegate it from the facility fund. Those are conversations that you should have, but just, she wanted me to share that with you.
You said that we wouldn't have plan-ready bids, but would we have some numbers, some
You would,
estimates?
you could have, no, so you wouldn't
Okay.
have bid-ready specs
Yeah.
that vendors could come
Okay.
in and build to
But
spec
they would
on.
give us an idea.
But we would have, yes, we would have enough so that we would be able to put some estimates on them. Not a lot unlike what we did, and you guys gave us $15,000 last summer or the summer before to kind of look at each of those facilities. We ended up, now, those were simpler. We were really looking at, very specific things, not a whole middle school concept. We were looking at very specific things, but we were looking at four different locations. 4 different locations. So, that meant, 4 different elevation, there was work, and that was 15. I think their actual bill came up closer to about 13 and change. So you had authorized 15, and that was the right amount for that. But that was very specific. That was entranceways, traffic flows, they were very identified, finite projects. This is bigger, because really you're adding classrooms, you're adding gymnasiums, maybe library, maybe cafeteria, all those things we have to put into play.
And I assume they have to have conversations with so many different administrators and staff to gauge what the
Exactly.
best flow and outcome would be.
Exactly. Act 250, environmental, engineers, architects, as well as the whole education component, all of us.
Okay. Other questions for Brenda?
So I'll move that to next month's agenda.
Yeah, I think so. Is everybody okay with that? Yep. Okay, so we will move that. Board member recruitment. So, people who are up for reelection in March are Angela, who is our Leicester rep, Matt Philo, who is our member at large, Emily, who's a member at large, and John, who seems to run like every year, it feels like.
He's our annual,
So,
he's our annual candidate.
because I think he just ran like last year too. But I'm just gonna, are you just running for your seat every year just because you like it? I don't know, I'm just kidding. Okay, so anyway.
Whaley moves towns.
So, I know, he's an at-large member, he's here to stay. Or no, are you Brandon? You're Brandon, that's right. Okay, so, it looks like a couple of our board members will be leaving us at the end of March, or at our March so we need to start thinking about letting people know that we are looking for some new board members. Particularly at-large board members. So they can be from any town. So this is a wake-up call for those people who are watching us right now. If you are interested in being on our school board, we will have probably 2 at-large positions open. They will be 3-year terms, and you can pick up
Your town clerks.
at the town clerk. There you go.
Local town clerks will give you, petition, that's the
Petition,
word.
and you need to get 60 names for an at-large position.
And you need to let them know you're running for an at-large position.
Right.
It's
So-
okay to be pushy. I picked up the paperwork and I brought it to Matt. I was like, here!
There you go. Well, that was awesome.
I did, I had signatures. I was like, you're
I got
ready?
you.
This
I
is
got you
yours.
1/10 of the way.
That's right. So, anyway, so we do need to start thinking about board members. We will probably in January have a meeting for any potential board members, that are thinking about that think they want to become on the board, because we'll do a policy governance meeting with them. I'll do it with Jean and maybe a couple more people to just talk about policy governance, what it involves, what it means to be a board member on a policy governance board, that kind of thing. So if we know people who are interested, then they can at least come and see if they're still interested after I get done with them. So, just kidding. Anyway, so just start thinking about that. The other thing, work plan development review, we need to identify methods of reporting executive limitations and monitoring. Reporting executive limitations and monitoring. Oh, So there are, we didn't realize this, but there are 3 methods to reporting on executive limitations. So one of them we did tonight, which is, what was this one called? This one was called, something. There's 3. One of them is direct inspection, which means that we
One would just
doesn't.
be a report.
This is the report one.
One is direct, yeah.
So direct inspection means that we would delegate a couple of board members who would actually go in and review whatever executive limitation that we're talking about and actually look at everything and make sure it pans out and then come back and report to the board. There's also one where external.
So it's
That's
internal.
internal. This is the internal monitoring report. We did that tonight. An external monitoring report is where we actually go out and we have somebody come in and actually do an external report for us and bring it back to us. So Jean doesn't do it, it's somebody else. That costs money. But one of those things that is external for us is the audit every year. And so they may be able to do an external monitoring report on 2.4 going forward. I think you were gonna talk to your auditors about that.
Well, 2.4 is financial planning.
Or is it
so
2.3?
I think it's 2.3.
Okay.
But, yeah.
But anyway, so what this is asking is, Jean would like to know which executive limitations we want to have direct inspection, internal monitoring reports, or external monitoring reports. So that's what we're discussing right now. Greg?
I was gonna ask, is there other external audits besides the financial one that people often do?
So I think that, yes, you always can do other external audits. You know, you could do program, as you look at the policies, you could choose different things that you would want an external review on. You know, what that might look like, whether that's, a consultant. I mean, the audit's an easy because it's always done, but it's also, not to dissuade you, but it's also a point in time and an after the fact situation. So, while it's an easy one to just call external, I'm not sure it gives you as much as maybe some of your other policies.
I feel like there would have to be something that would trigger us to do something.
Do you want to do an external one?
Yeah, so if you kind of,
Well, it's not even financial, we might have a company come in and do our treatment of staff and do the whole, and then bring them on.
compensation and benefits,
Yeah.
have an outside person come in and say, are your compensation and benefit packages fair? That might be something you would say, this is worthy of an external inspection. I'm not saying I would say that because that's not one that I would tell you I think is worthy of it. But, kind of as you look at this, executive limitations, those are the things that you're talking about, so, treatment of staff, parents and guardians, a treatment of student parents and guardians, treatment of staff, financial condition and activities, that's really where the audit is, because that's what happened. What we just went over was financial planning and budgeting. Emergency superintendent succession, we hope we never have to worry with that. Asset protection, compensation of benefits, communication and support of the board. And then there's all of your board delegated ones and your board limitations. So I think that you can do any of them, but I think Susan said in the first year, usually they're internal and direct inspection.
Right, and she also said that, if you were having trouble on your board or you didn't have good rapport with your CEO, superintendent or whatever, then you might do an external just to make sure things are hunky-dory.
I think, Lloyd, that speaks to Greg's point. I think there would have to be some causality that would make us want to look much more closely at something. Something would have to happen or be going on.
Okay.
Does this require action?
Well, she wants to know because Barstow is willing to do the same thing that we're doing, I believe is what I understand. So Barstow is being very generous because they've of course done policy governance for 2 years now and we're just barely getting into it. So they're being very generous. They don't want Jean to have to do different work, different months. So they have been very kind to allow Otter Valley to kind of take the run with this. So like we said, we wanted to do 2.4 first. So she's doing them both simultaneously, so as not to have to continually, go back over the same kind of information for each district. So,
I don't think that requires an action, but I think that's something that we would just want to do. Just sort of keep in mind. I can't imagine asking Jean to do something for us and something different for Otter,
but the idea is that if we want internal monitoring reports, then she'll do the same for Barstow. If we
That's
say
what
we want direct inspection for one, then Barstow will do the same thing. So that's kind of why they're asking.
Let's just continue to always have that kind of an.
Right, yes, no, absolutely.
Doubling.
Right.
Yeah.
For no good reason.
What did
Exactly.
Barstow do in the past, since they got started before us? Have they done one of the monitoring?
They have,
Of the
so,
direct
again, we have learned. So they did a kind of a mix mash between an internal and a direct inspection. And that was honestly because Jean and I, at least in my world of the policies, didn't understand the difference between evidence and process. And so we gave them evidence that they did not need. So we kind of, I'm sorry to say, buried them in detail, versus I think you said, that you both liked the brevity of it, that it was succinct and it was clear and it kind of answered the questions you had. The first time we kind of gave them both. And so the reason why the question is being asked is if you want an evidence binder, if there's something that you would want to actually go and look at the evidence on, we would prepare that in advance of when it was due. And that's why it's good for us every year to know which policies you would want direct inspection on so that we could prepare an evidence binder. So for example, this 2.4 doesn't have an evidence binder on it. We could, if you had said that that was one you wanted, then I would have, the detailed report and I would highlight things and show you, a lot of very boring information.
Yeah, Derek.
In our work plan, what's the next limitations?
Treatment of students, parents, and guardians.
Right.
Say that again?
Treatment of students, parents, and guardians.
When is that?
November.
It would seem to me that unless there's some burning issues, that we should go ahead with an internal report first, and then if things surface from that, then we would pursue, even probably the first round, that as we're entering into this reporting format,
Would be internal.
would be internal, unless there's signals that it should be otherwise,
Okay.
that we should proceed in that way. I don't know if people have concerns about certain issues.
So how does everyone else, does everyone else feel that at least for this first year, we do internal monitoring reports for the 4 limitations that we're going to be reviewing this year?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, so we just figured it out. Look at that. Lovely.
I think what we
Yeah.
can say too is, yeah, we agree, and part of it is by getting these monitoring reports, we're getting more information than we really ever have.
That's true.
So we're not settling, we're actually gaining information, and then we can go from there and decide how do we want to do it differently. But I think it's
Right.
important for our constituents to know that we're
Mhm.
not just blowing off the other options, but in
Right.
fact, we're getting more information we've ever had.
Great. Yes, that is absolutely true. Thank you. Okay,
Something rises to the level that triggers.
No.
so we're not going to do executive session because we're going to do the budgeting stuff next. I don't think,
That's fine.
Is it okay with it?
Absolutely, that's
You
fine.
don't need info
I don't-
for negotiations?
do they need info for negotiations, or were you just going to give us some?
Can you give me 5 minutes?
Sure, okay. So what
Just
we are
in
going to
case.
do, first of all, our next board meeting is October 16th at Otter Valley. We will be continuing our task force initiatives, doing breakout sessions. We'll probably be talking a lot about the stuff that we did at Harvest Fest and what we did at whatever, and also things moving forward. We need to do a board self-evaluation, and so we're just gonna pick one question from this, let's see.
Flip back.
Can I ask a
Yeah.
silly question about
Sure.
this?
So are we supposed to still do the full evaluation online if we're just doing, or are we just doing the one question at the
We're
end?
just gonna do the one question at the end tonight, I think. If
I
you're.
wasn't sure if I was compliant or not at the end.
Yep, no, right, no,
that.
no, the only, we
Okay.
found that sending it out to everyone was not good. We did not get a good response.
I
It
did
was-
it both ways
It was
after
not
last meeting,
good.
but I wasn't
Okay,
really sure if
yeah,
that was
so,
Sounds like you were the only one.
all right,
I'm
so,
cool with that.
we did that one last time, all right.
Am I supposed to do this?
So here's the question, this is a good one. We limited our decisions to items that related to the board's governance job. Always, most of the time, some of the time, rarely, never. So you can do that based on a fist of 5. So we limited our decisions to items that related to the board's governance job. We are so good. All right, awesome. Okay. So we are going to go into executive session, if somebody wants to put us in at 7:43 to discuss negotiations, which the blah, 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 you know. There we go. Okay, thank you. Yeah, cut and paste, blah, blah, blah. Yep, there you go, so moved.
Second.
Thank you.